Okay, this is going to be part of a short series on getting you into 3ds Max. We're going to go through the creation of some simple 3D assets, unwrapping them, applying textures, and getting them into Unreal Engine. Each tutorial, I'm going to double check that you are having your user interface set up correctly. So one of the first things that you'll notice when you open up 3ds Max is that you have 4 viewports, and I'm just going to show you how to make sure things like units are set up correctly and that we working in the correct measurements. So the first thing that I want you to do is to click over here and click this button here, and that's going to change your layout so that your orthographic views, these 3 viewports, moved over to the left, and then we're going to scale them so they're a little bit smaller. So now your perspective viewport has a much more appropriate size. This is your scene outliner. For the moment, we won't be utilizing this, so we're going to drag it out and close it. If you ever want to bring that up again, we can click this button here or this button for the layer explorer, which will pop up here. Okay, now we've changed our layout. We can drag that out and move it. And there's going to be loads of options once we start 3D modeling that appear on the right-hand panel. So I'd like you to hover over where the bar is orange and drag it out until it snaps into 2. Okay. Potentially you could even go as far as 3, but you might make this window a bit too small if you do that. Okay. So we're going to make a really, really simple asset to get you used to working in 3ds Max. But the first thing that we need to do is set up our units. So now we've got our space set up correctly. If we start, say, creating a cylinder, our units displayed here, but they are in nothing in particular. And when we put that into Unreal Engine, we're not going to have the mesh size be what we think it would be or measured in centimeters. So let's delete this, go to customize. We can first go into, in fact, I'll do that a bit slower for you. So I'm going to go to customize. We'll go to unit setup first, click metric, change that to centimeters, go to system unit setup and make sure this is also on centimeters. Click OK, click OK. We can see the grid here is set up for us. By default, this will be set up in 10 of whatever unit we're using. So these are 10 centimeters apart. If we right click on the 3 with a magnet here, the snaps toggle setting, we can go to the home grid and you can create a larger grid like this. And we can change the measurement of that grid like this. So these are now 1 centimeter grids, change 5 centimeters or whatever unit you want to be working in. Okay. So I'll keep that as 1 centimeter for now. You don't need to keep it like that. This is just something that you should be aware that you can change depending on the scale of the 3D object that you're making. Next thing I'd like you to do, which will help you when we go into edit poly mode, is to disable the caddy controls. That will help you understand some of the settings that we're applying to 3D models. Always have this disabled and you'll get a much nicer preview. We can go to undo levels and increase that. We can even go into our auto backup and increase the amount of times that our files will back up. So right now it's every 15 minutes. Let's change that to every 5 minutes and keep that as 10. So we can go back up to 50 minutes back in time if we have any crashes with 5-minute intervals in between them. Right. So to move around, we can hold down the Alt key and middle mouse to rotate the camera. We can scroll to zoom in and out, and we can just hold down the middle mouse button to pan around. If we can zoom in onto the object. So if we go really far away and rotate the camera, press Z, and then we will always zoom in onto the object that is selected. We can also do this on these viewports here to zoom in on them. The next thing that you might want to be able to do is to actually move the objects around. You can press W, E, and R, scale, rotate, and move. Okay, so W, E, and W for move, E for rotate, and R for scale. If you tap some of these too many times, so if I press R, you can see I'm going to cycle through scale modes. So if I'm on this one, this select and squash, and I scale, it will act strangely. And if you see that your scale is acting in a different way, that might be why. One of the other things that I notice some people do is when they're selecting multiple objects. So if I copy this out by holding down Shift, and say you were selecting by holding down Control with multiple objects, people might hold down the mouse and just knock models like this, okay? It'll be very minor movements, but if you press Q and you click and drag, or drag boxes or control and click, you can't move it, okay? That's just in the select only. But you can select objects with the move tool, or you might, or the rotate tool, knock objects as you click and select them. So if you find yourself doing that, press Q to enter select mode. I'm going to press Z. If you ever press F or T or R to, let's show you exactly what's happening there. So if I press T, I'm looking at the top. If I press F, I'm looking at the front. If I press, I believe, it's L for the left-hand side, we will change the view to an orthographic mode. And then we start rotating the camera, we'll notice that it's still orthographic. It looks like an isometric game. Another quick way to just fix the camera is P. So anytime you're having problems with the camera, press Z and P, mash them a couple of times, and that will generally fix all camera issues that you're having at the moment. All right. So you can see this one's set to the top, that one's set to the front, and that one's set to the left. If you ever need to use one of these in its entirety, you can press Alt-W on each one to fill the frame. All right. So let's get into making our model after that quick recap. Let's start with making, some of you will have done the treasure chest tutorial so far. So let's go to make a coin to go with that. I'm going to start with the cylinder. Creation method is going to be center. I'm going to reduce the height segments. I'm going to change the sides down to a power of 2. And that will be 16. Okay. So anytime you're making a cylinder, try either 8 or 16. Okay. Not 816. So when we drag this out now, we can see we've got 8 sides on the cylinder. If we change that to 16, it will be smoother, and that might be a little bit better. The reason we want power of 2 is that we get nice 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. If we have 32, it's going to be, again, 8 a quarter. And it's just a lot easier to embed into 3D models later on when we're doing more complex modeling. So we have this shape right now. Let's make it maybe 1 centimeter thick and 4 centimeters in its radius. Still quite a big coin, but we can play around with the scale later on. The next thing that we want to do is to be able to, for you to know how I am doing this. So you can see when I press 4 on the keyboard, we're going between default shading and edged faces. If you click on here, we can see these different settings. We've got flat color, default shading, all of these, and they'll come in handy for different times. Clay and edged faces is quite a useful one for just having high visibility. We can't see much smoothing on the models when we're in that one. Generally, default shading with edged faces on is the best to go for, okay? If your computer's a little bit better, you might want to have high quality on, and you'll get a bit of a nicer shading result. But if you're working on a weaker PC, standard is absolutely fine, or even performance as well. And that will just get rid of the color, okay? I'm going to work on performance, and I'm also going to set my colors for all objects to be black. And I'm going to select the black color, and then instead of assign random colors, I'm going to click OK. And now anytime I create a model, it's going to be a gray box with a black outline, which is quite nice to see. Okay. If we go into standard though, they're all going to be black. A quick way to see that grey material on them is to press the M key on your keyboard, go to modes, compact material editor, and we can drag this material onto our objects, okay? We can change these materials, and this is where we can assign textures later on. Now, we're back in standard, and this is probably the best way to create 3D models. Even if we go into high quality, we can see them really, really clearly, just as well as we could in the clay view, but now with better shading on them. All right, so we've got our coin, or our silhouette for our coin. Let's give it a bit of detail. So to do that, we're going to go to the modifier list and add an editable poly modifier. Edit poly on here, and we can select one side of this coin and choose the inset button. So you can see it opens up a window like this when we click the black settings here. Don't press the insert here, because if you do that, it's going to highlight it blue, and then you have to do it by eye like this, okay? But if we want to add in specific variables, we can click the settings and it's going to open up this. If it doesn't look like this for you, it's because you didn't turn off Caddy View on here. So if I enable Caddy View and I go back to this, it looks stupid like that. Don't use it like that. So let's turn that off. And now we've got this. So we can do it by group or by polygon. We want it by group, even though we're only doing it by one single polygon right now. And we're going to do a 1 centimeter inset right now. And then we're also going to do a 0.5 centimeter extrude. Okay, so 0.5, or you can literally just type 0.5. It knows it's in centimeters, so it's going to be 5 millimeters. And that's went the wrong way. All right, so we need to go Control Z to undo. And we go back to the extrude and we can type minus 0.5. And now it's going to go in this way. This is still probably too much in terms of the thickness of the coin for the other side, and I'll show you how we can get this detail on the other side. What I'm going to do is now just do this by eye. I'm going to just lift this up until I have a little bit of a gap here, okay? So it won't matter what the exact value is for the rest of this tutorial, as long as there's something similar to this. If we wanted to, we could round out the edge of this coin by clicking one of these edges and then clicking it again to select the whole ring around. So that it was to double click and that will select all of these. And if we press the chamfer setting with uniform segments 1, depth 0.5, and we'll go into here and we'll try 0.25 and we round off this edge, okay? So what this is doing is rounding off the edge of the coin. So we're going to do 0.25, click OK, and I'm quite happy with that. The next thing that I'm going to do is add on a symmetry modifier to flip these details onto the other side of the coin, and then we can see it's added that on the x-axis along here, but we want it along the z-axis here, so we're going to click Z, and now it's done that, but it's made our coin twice as thick. Kind of looks like a tire right now. So we need to move where the mirror position is, and if we move that up to down here in the coordinates 0.5, we should have the coin pop up in the correct place because we made it on the grid and the cylinder was originally at 0, 0, 0. If that doesn't work for you, you can go to the Create tab, select your coin, and just make sure that its position in the world is at 0, 0, okay? We can right-click this and right-click this, and now it's at 0, 0, 0, okay? So that means that the origin of the coin is at the world origin, and when we export our coin, it will be like that. So we can have a look at this, and now that has applied both sides for us. I'm going to now convert this. I'm going to bake these changes in. Okay, so it's another terminology. When we are collapsing the modifiers, we will not be able to change these anymore, but we're happy with these settings. So I'm going to convert it to an editable poly, and we see all of those things go, and we're happy with those settings. All right. I just want to clean up this line here. I don't want it there. So I'm going to press Control and backspace to get rid of that. And on this one, Control and backspace again, and we've cleaned those up. I could clean up this to be quad topology. This is a very large n-gon, and I'll cover what that means later on. But because it's a flat surface, it actually won't matter at the moment, okay? And the same for this one, I'm going to leave it. For the purpose of this, I think I want the origin point of this coin to be exactly where it is, because if we have a look at the gizmo, or if I give a floor to this, you can see it's placed exactly on the floor. And so if we wanted to put this coin on the floor in a game, it will be really easy to place like that. We can, if I copy this out, change the pivot by clicking this tab here, click Effect Pivot. If we centered it to the object, we can now rotate it from the center. And if we wanted some sort of like spinning coin to pick up in the game, we could do that and animate it from the center of it. But with this one, it would actually be rotating from the pivot point underneath the coin. This pivot point is really important for all of these things. So if we put it over here and now start rotating, it rotates from that area as well. Okay, so it's really important that your pivot point is in the correct place when you're creating 3D models. So we're happy with this. And now we want to start applying some color information to it. We've done the treasure chest tutorial before, so the written one. So you should know that we can click on the object, drop down from the modifier list and add an unwrap modifier. So unwrap UVW being for 2D coordinate system. We know it's been applied correctly because we could see green lines all over it. Sometimes if this edit poly is not highlighted in blue and you add an unwrap modifier onto it, but you can't see the green lines, it just might have applied the unwrap modifier to just a small piece of the object and not the entire object. So just convert it to an editable poly and apply the unwrap modifier again. Open the UV editor, and then we have this new menu, user interface. Okay, so coin, if we made it how I suggested, will look something like this. If it looks different, it's fine because we're going to do some things already. All right, so the way that unwrapping works, so if I put this checker pattern on, we can see this checker pattern is on this coin here. And if I flatten this object and lay it out, we can see these checkers now sort of lay out nicely, and I can press relax on here and we might get even more regularized sort of patterns along these. If I select this one, for example, and I start to squish it using the select freeform mode scale, we can see as I move this, so if I align this up on this grid here, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and we can see 1, 2, 3, 4 across. Okay, so this is where, if there is an image behind here, that image will apply here. Okay, so what we want to do is start to plan out our texture for this. Because it's a really simple coin, we only really want to unwrap half of this. So what I'm going to do is convert it back to an editable poly. I'm going to highlight, I'm going to look at it from the left view, I'm going to highlight the bottom of the coin, and I'm going to delete it. Okay, we're going to make that again later with a symmetry modifier. But if I put this, symmetry modifier on it, put Z onto it, and we put that here and move the mirror up to 0.5, that's there, but we're not going to bake that in. We're going to go back to the edit poly and we're going to put an unwrap on it. And this is in between it now. So what we're going to do is unwrap it, then apply the symmetry afterwards, okay? So it's going to save half of our work. And now you can see there's only half as many islands here. So this one's actually a really simple object to unwrap. I'm going to select all of the faces with the face tool here, drag a box over it so it's completely red. And I'm going to press this button, planar map. And if it looks like this for you, that's great. But if it needs to, if it looks like that or like that, you might need to press Z so that the plane projection, you can see how it rotates around to unwrap it so that it's completely flatly mapped here. All right. So we've got that. This is not 100% ideal though for texturing because we have not got any seam. So I'm going to turn off planar projection so we can start moving this around. We have no seam along here, and this information. So if I put that checker pattern back onto it, you can't quite tell. Maybe on the texture checker, you should be able to tell that it's stretched along here because behind here or here, these islands were not given any space, okay? So one of the ways we can fix that is literally by selecting the whole thing and pressing relax. And now we can see it's not stretched anymore, okay? So the whole piece is one piece. And if we pack this, by going to this button down here, pack custom, it will put it in here, and now we have no stretching. When we're working in textures, it's kind of a bad thing to have angles like this because pixels are square and this line is going over pixels, and we can see, does the texture want to read from this pixel or this pixel? Or this pixel. So it's crossing over half a pixel. So if your texture is not padded correctly, we can start to get artifacting around the edges of particular assets, okay? For this one, it's probably going to be okay, but just for you to bear in mind, and when we get into more advanced objects down the line, I'll show you how to fix that. But for now, this will work for us. So I'm going to close that and I'm going to go to symmetry, and we've got that. And I'm going to convert that to an editable poly. And if I just show you to check with the unwrap now, and I put this on here, this is unwrapped and this is unwrapped, okay? The only thing is, this one, you'll notice the other side is backwards, okay? Because it's mirrored. So if this one reads correctly, this one is completely mirrored. So what we're going to do is select all of this, again, by pressing L. We're going to select all of the bits which are facing backwards, which are underneath the underneath side, because that's what we mirrored. And that should rotate around. So it hasn't selected everything as I've selected a bounding box over it, because I have this setting on, this ignore back facing. Disable that. Doesn't really come in handy during unwrapping all that much, but it's on by default. If I select again now, I have all of that selected. And what I can do is press this button to mirror. And now when I have a look at it, this reads correctly and this reads correctly. Okay. So both sides, if we put text on this 3D model, will read correctly. So that's completely unwrapped and we're ready to apply a texture map to it. That's really easy on the college PCs. As long as you've logged into your Creative Cloud with your college account, you should be able to press Windows and open up Photoshop. And we'll start from scratch in this. Okay. We're in a completely empty Photoshop. So we're going to click New File. Textures always want to be powers of 2 as well. So we're going to change it to pixels. And for this one, we just need a very small texture. We're going to do 512 by 512. Okay. So if you do 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256, 512, 1024, 2048, 4096, 8192, you will be absolutely fine in terms of your texture limits, but try not to go up to 8192. Let's create that. Photoshop works with layers. So we want to start with a layer in here. And because I would export out the wireframe for this, but this coin, it's going to be really, really simple. All we're going to do is add on a gradient. Okay, so I'm going to select a gradient here. I'm going to select the basic one here and pick 2 colors. For gold, I'm going to do a sort of dark yellow and then a brighter one here. I'm going to drag the gradient, but I want that to be the other way around. So I'm going to grab the handle from here, bring that there, okay, and in just a little bit. I'm happy with that. And then I can create another layer on top of this, and we can even type in some text to show what value this coin is. Let's make it £1. Okay. So we can grab that, and the default color of the text is the color that we had here. So if we wanted to change that, we can, I believe it's click this, and now we should be able to make that whatever color we want. Okay. But I'm going to click cancel because I actually think it looks good like that. I'm going to scale this up a little bit more, and then to apply some effects to this to make it look like it's part of the coin, we are going to right click the layer and we're going to click blended options, but we can't see them. Oh yes, we can. Yeah, blended options. Sometimes you can't see settings if the layer is a smart layer. So what we're going to do is select bevel and emboss, and we can see that now this looks like it's got some shading to pop out. But what I'm actually going to do is change that to a outer bevel, a emboss here. We're going to change the size, soften it very slightly, just a little bit, and I'm going to make it down so it's going into the coin. Okay, there we go. Actually, yeah, we can increase the depth a bit more now. Let's try tweaking the scale, softening it just a little. There we go. We can actually change the light direction from but I want it coming from the top as well. That looks absolutely fine to me. Let's save this. So we are going to save as, and you're going to notice that you don't have the settings to save as a JPEG. The quickest way to get around this for the moment to export, quick export as a PNG, and that will work for us as well. We're going to put this just somewhere sensible. I'm going to just put it into my 3ds Max folder. I'm going to make a new folder called textures. And as long as you're working on one of the college PCs, if this path says something like OneDrive, these textures will follow you around as well. I'm going to put it in here, type coin, enter, and that's finished. To apply it in 3ds Max, I'm going to press M. I'm going to click our material we've assigned. In fact, I'm going to get a new one. I'm going to click where it says base color and reflections. Click that. Type bitmap for bitmap. Select that. And we are going to go to my 3ds Max folder, my textures folder, fine, and now it's on there. Click this button here to show the shaded material in the viewport, and then we can click up to go to parent, and now we can start changing some settings if we need to. We drag this onto here. We now have £1 on our coin, and we have that texture with the gradient going to the top, and the same on this one. Okay. And because we mirrored it around, the gradient follows perfectly either side and the texture lines up. Okay. So we've got all of that, and it's really quick now. If we wanted to go into here, because we've worked in layers, we can change the value of this to be 2. And export, quick export, click that, overwrite, yes. Then it is updated instantly into 3ds Max. It hasn't actually updated here. It's still showing for 1, but it's reading the file. You could, if you wanted to, add in metalness on here to try and make it look, but if you don't have any lights, that might just break it. That won't actually do anything for once we get it into Games Engine anyway. So at this point, this is ready to export and to put into an Unreal Engine file. And that is exactly the same process as that you've done before. So I'm going to put the tutorial here and then move on to something else.